I want to start with you, Mr. Tuhin Sinha, first. You're here in the studio, and I want to ask you the simple question. Indictment made in the US suggests that bribes were paid, some as high as 1,700 crores, for specific contracts. The government of India is targeting the Congress party and Rahul Gandhi. Why not instead order a probe and find out whether bribes were paid or not? Doodh ka doodh, pani ka pani, surely.
Rajdeep, the primary onus to act in this case is upon the 4 state governments where bribes are supposed to have been or alleged to have been paid. Now, the strange part...
Why do you say that? The Solar Energy Corporation of India is controlled by the centre. The contracts, all the state governments are saying were essentially between Solar Energy Corporation of India, a central PSU and the state governments.
Solar Energy Corporation of India can act, but I think the primary onus is upon the state because the government officials of those 4 specific states have been named over here. Now, when it comes to Tamil Nadu, ideally, DMK is the only surviving state government from that time. Ideally, they should have already filed an FIR by now, but DMK today has plainly denied the charges.
No, but
now,
what stops your government? No, your government is in power in Chhattisgarh. Your government is in power in Odisha. Why don't they order an inquiry,
Like I said, the primary onus is on them. We are not ruling out any action.
No, why don't you? No, 1 minute. States, sir, with due regard, state governments, as you rightly said, there is an onus on them as well. What stops the Odisha state government, BJP ruled, and Chhattisgarh state government, BJP ruled, from ordering an inquiry whether bribes were paid?
Ideally, they should. My sense is that they were waiting. My sense is that they were waiting for the first reaction from the chief ministers of that time. And the strange part today is that Bhupesh Baghel, who was the chief minister, is now blaming Raman Singh. When is the time when the bribes were supposed to have been paid? 2021 to 2022. Now, he does not even remember that he was the chief minister during that time. You know, it seems that only gives credence to the fact, our accusation that this entire conspiracy seems to have its roots in Rahul Gandhi's association with George Soros.
With George Soros?
Yes.
You're saying that Rahul Gandhi's association with George Soros is responsible for this. I only ask you this before I go to the others. You're saying state governments have primary owners. What about the Solar Energy Corporation of India, on the basis of which these power purchase agreements were signed?
My sense is they're waiting for the state governments to respond. Why I say Rahul Gandhi's connection with Soros is because of the way he drags in Prime Minister at every given opportunity and, indicates his proximity as Adani as the reason behind the scam. Now, the point is, I'm giving you a very simple example. In 2023 February, India struck Tata struck its largest deal ever in aviation history with Boeing. That was also preceded by a Prime Minister's visit to the US. Do they blame Prime Minister as an agent of the Tatas? The BEL and HAL have today recorded 20 times increase in production and exports. Do they blame Prime Minister to be an agent of HAL or BEL? It's very convenient for them to blame, Prime Minister's proximity with Adani, and which is where I question the intentions of Rahul Gandhi.
Okay, just one more question. The reason why maybe the opposition questions the Adani-Modi relationship in particular is because you see the manifold increase in Mr. Adani's wealth coinciding with Mr. Modi's rise as a politician. Again, are you saying, and the fact is, neither side has denied the fact that they've had a certain special relationship.
If you look at the history of Adani's businesses, Adani has been on record to say that it was Rajiv Gandhi's interventions which made, a businessman out of him. If you look at the period between 2007 and 2012, that is where the credit expansion to Adani companies have been to the tune of 76%, highest for any, corporate group across the country. So, if in the preceding period, 2004, if the seeds for this expansion had been laid, it was but natural that if he doesn't commit follies, he will grow.
Okay. Let me bring in Praveen Chakravarti there. Tuhin Sinha raises several important points, particularly about accountability. Let's assume, Praveen Chakravarti, that bribes indeed have been paid as the indictment suggests. Who orders the probe? Where does... Rahul Gandhi says that Mr. Adani must be arrested at once. First of all, this is before a US court. The proceedings will take place before a US court. To that extent, you could argue in India, there is limited liability unless a probe is ordered. What is the position of you and the Congress party when it comes to the probe? In what direction and how should a probe be ordered in a case like this?
We must first understand the magnitude and the severity of the situation that we are dealing with today. I think we must not be puerile and childish about this. And we must grow up a little bit and understand this in a mature manner. Let me give some examples. On March 11th, 1999, when I was living in America, the first Indian company, Infosys, came and listed on the NASDAQ stock exchange. It was a proud moment. In July 2001, when HDFC Bank came and listed in the New York Stock Exchange, it was a proud moment for Indian businesses in the same United States of America. Today, we have one of India's biggest businessmen who has been issued an arrest warrant. He cannot step foot in the United States of America, and he's India's biggest businessman. And this is after a 2-year investigation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, by the Department of Justice, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. Now, while I understand that some of the people speaking on behalf of the ruling regime think that everything can be managed in every democracy as they do in India, that is not the case in America. It's a 2-year investigation process.
What is the Indian number? What is the Indian? That's the American side. What about India's responsibility here? The state governments, many of them were opposition ruled. You had a Congress ruled government in Chhattisgarh, for example.
Which is what I'm coming to. Not for a minute do I feel proud that an Indian businessman, a large Indian businessman, is being shamed in America. We don't want that. Now, what is the resolution? What did we do when the Satyam scandal happened in India, on Indian shores? We got together, we said we will resolve this collectively as a nation. These things happen. We understand these things happen. Now, there has been a clear indictment after a rigorous 2-year investigation. We must be mature. After all, we receive $50 billion every year from America. Our image is at stake. Let's be mature. Let's come together. This is not about political point scoring. Whichever government, whichever party was in power in whichever state, this is why Mr. Rahul Gandhi said, let's call for a joint parliamentary committee and let that inquire. Let all of us come together. Let all of us come together and say we will resolve this.
No, it's one thing it's one thing, Mr. Chakravarti, to ask for a joint parliamentary probe. It's another thing to say arrest Mr. Adani. There's a due process that has to be followed. It's an indictment. It's not a conviction in the United States also yet. He could even file for plea bargaining, and I'll come to that in a moment. But in this country, whose primary responsibility is it to use this indictment to order a full and fair inquiry, in your view?
What does logic say? The US government, the US District Court has ruled that Adani bribed Indian officials, which means the bribe was paid in India. The last time I checked, receiving a bribe in India is also illegal under the Prevention of Corruption Act. So who is in power? Which government is in power at the center? Please, they have very categorically said bribes were paid. Who was it paid to? Please conduct an inquiry. We're all for it. It does not matter to us which party, in which state, and which year, and who was in power. None of that. Okay. Let us come together, whatever the Modi government wants to do. The reason we say that we are skeptical of any action is because of what has happened in the last 10 years. History shows that there will be absolutely nothing that will happen in this case, just as we saw in the SEBI case, where the SEBI chairperson had the gumption, had the audacity to not show up for a parliamentary committee hearing. Why is she scared? What is she scared of? Why is she scared?
Okay.
Is she not accountable to Parliament? Why did she not come on the morning of the day she was summoned? What is she scared of? This is why we're not quite confident of the Modi government's ability to conduct a fair and impartial investigation into this.
I'm going to come in a moment to former Finance Secretary Garg and my two lawyers on the panel, but I want you to respond to that, Tuin Sinha. Logic would suggest that any government, if this happened to one of India's top 2 businessmen, if something like this happened, the center, rather than targeting the opposition on this, would be focusing its attention on the facts of the case. And if the facts of the case merit an investigation, would say we will order an investigation.
Right.
Why y'all seem to protest it too much? What are y'all trying? Who are you trying to protect? Is the question being asked.
We have limited faith in a district level attorney of US. I want to read out for you an excerpt from the Economic Times of 13th April 2010, which reads, a US court has held that the former director of Indian operations of Thomas Weasel Partners has breached the fiduciary responsibility he owed to the US investment bank. The US court has also found that the official concern has caused injury to the investment banking firm. Praveen Chakravarti was a director in the US Investments Banks of India operations and also its head of research, which had 55 employees. Now, obviously, Praveen Chakravarti is representing the Congress, knows a lot about the US judicial systems because he has faced conviction over there. But we have limited trust in US, a district attorney of US passing such an indictment judgment.
No. Are you saying, therefore, that you have no faith in US laws? Are you saying that the United States has also carried out some kind of a kangaroo operation?
No, we will wait for conviction.
Shouldn't the government's first reaction when serious charges of bribery are made first order a probe rather than find someone, whether it's a Praveen Chakravarti here on the show or a Rahul Gandhi?
Like I said, we don't believe in knee-jerk reactions. A proper response will follow post the responses from each of the state governments. But if Rahul Gandhi is so serious, let him approach the Supreme Court. Let him ask for a Supreme Court monitored inquiry. Let him get Adani arrested. Okay. Imagine the leader of opposition of India demands for the arrest of people based on indictments, in which case he should be rearrested in the National Herald case.
Okay. I want to keep my focus at the moment on the Adani case, because the Adani case is where the indictment at the moment is.